Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice, and I'm excited to be speaking with Nicola Jones, who is director of the SDG program at Springer Nature, SDG standing for Sustainable Development Goals. In the next 4 episodes, we'll be addressing, you guessed it, Sustainable Development Goals, but our discussion will specifically address how a major publisher has realigned some of its output to match and support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As director of Springer's SDG program, Nicola is responsible for coordinating the publishing activity across Springer Nature's portfolio as it relates to the UN's goals. This has required significant changes to the publisher's interdisciplinary relationships and activities from both an editorial and operational perspective. Nicola is here to give us an insider's look at those changes and how they've been rolled out to the academic, research, and professional communities. This series is brought to you with support from Springer Nature. In this 3rd episode, we examine Springer's SDG program more closely by highlighting a few of the publisher's SDG content hubs, including good health and well-being, quality education, and affordable and clean energy. We'll look at how these hub formats collect and organize Springer's varied resources. So you mentioned, you talked about the hub and the organization around the SDG hubs, and I'm wondering if we could drill down into a few of specific ones of those, and maybe just start with good health and well-being. How has Springer organized its assets into this particular category?
Yes, SDG 3 is really, really, really broad in its scope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the SDGs where the most research content, I think it's the one that has the most research content published annually. And it comes from lots of different areas, not just from clinical medicine and public health areas, but also from social sciences, some cases the humanities, more applied sciences areas. It's just really, really, really broad. And one of the things that we find when we look at our own publishing program is that a researcher who's interested in cancer, for example, which comes under SDG 3, under non-communicable diseases, probably isn't also researching road traffic accidents.
Right.
Which is another target within SDG 3. It's really, really diverse. So the way in which we have approached our SDG 3 hub is to regularly update with a different topic focus. And the topics are chosen by the SDG 3 working group, and they relate to the sort of overarching themes of SDG 3. In some cases, they relate quite specifically to targets. So we've done collections around suicide prevention,
Mm-hmm.
for example, which again is a target within SDG 3. But in other cases, they relate to more kind of broad general themes like health and well-being of migrant populations, which is something that countries are increasingly having to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
We've also launched, to support that content hub, a blog series, actually 2 or 3 blog series that look at the work that's being done in communities on the ground to ensure health at the kind of community level,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in parts of the world that are not always, they don't always receive the same sort of access or priority within the published literature. And the fact that we are the publisher of the Biomed Central journals really enables us to reach into marginalized communities because the content is all open,
Mm-hmm.
and find the right kind of authors and editors and networks there who are able to talk about, actually, why is this research important? It's important because it's saving lives, and this is how it's saving lives.
Excellent. So then, likewise, another hub is quality education. Education is I guess, sort of a foundational goal in that all research is essentially born out of an education. So how does this hub collect and organize its assets?
Yeah, totally. I think SDG 4 is really, really fundamental
Hmm.
to everything. If there's not education, then there kind of can't be anything else.
Exactly.
Um, and Springer, in particular, the Springer imprint, has published a lot of educational research over the years. And I think SDG 4 is another SDG where there's a really large volume of research published annually. And the way in which we bring this together is to host what I would say research about how you deliver quality education
Hmm.
alongside research on issues in education. If you see the two sort of slightly different angles there. So there's, research on what is best practice on education in different settings. And then there's research on what are different debates going on about education at the moment. So, for example, we have a blog on the SDG 4 hub about critical race theory and
Hmm.
culture wars in education and how that relates to the provision of quality education overall. And what do we mean by quality education?
Right. Does this hub have a similar sort of updating schedule that the health and well-being one has, or is it just a different kind of
It does have a
approach?
similar updating schedule.
Hmm.
So, in terms of refreshing the content that's on the hubs, that happens for all of them
Hmm.
3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
The SDG 4 hub is, I would say, a bit more general in terms of it maintains a focus on education
Hmm.
throughout, whereas the SDG 3 hub maintains a focus on a slightly different, more specific aspect of health and well-being within each of its updates.
Okay.
And that's just part of the nature of the goals themselves and the way in which the research communities relate to them.
Hmm. Now, is there a person or people who kind of manage the hub in terms of like uh, executing on the updates and looking to see like or deciding or I guess you said it was the work groups that kind of drive that,
Well,
right?
so the working groups are responsible for recommending the content that's showcased on the hubs and commissioning blogs and podcasts and that kind of content.
Okay.
But there is an assigned marketing colleague that's responsible for maintaining the updates on each of the hubs on this schedule. And this is really what I meant when I said that it's much more embedded into our processes throughout the business now.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
6 years ago, I would have to kind of go to marketing and say, the SDGs are really important. Can you promote what we're doing around the SDGs? And, you know, some of the marketing colleagues really appreciated what an opportunity this was. And
Right.
thanks to their work, it has now become embedded into our marketing operations
Hmm.
that this is a way that we promote our content and that there is this kind of regular update schedule. And this is just now part of your job. If you are a
Right.
subject marketer, you have no choice but
Hmm.
to pay attention to the SDGs that are relevant to the subjects that you work on.
Okay, excellent. So I noticed in the Affordable and Clean Energy Hub, there's a Sustainable Future webinar series, and I'm curious just how these webinars tap into and help support Springer's broader efforts with its SDG program.
Yeah, so this is the latest iteration of the Science for a Sustainable Future collaboration with SDSN.
Hmm.
So it's in this instance going to take the form of 3 separate webinars organised over consecutive Wednesdays at the end of April. And we will be bringing together voices from different sectors. So we have 3 panels lined up. One is on energy and the role of energy in the global transition to net zero. One is on energy and issues of social justice, particularly in the global south. And the third is on energy and science communication, and how the message or messages about the importance of renewables, sustainable energy can be communicated in a world in which that's increasingly politicized. So we'll have speakers who are authors of ours. They may have written for us. They may be academics who are connected in SDSN's network. They may be journalists themselves. They may be science communicators themselves. And the idea is that this conference series will bring together people from these different sectors. We also have people who work in organizations that are active in terms of implementing the transition to renewable energy in particular communities in different locations. It's a really, really exciting conference series to bring together lots of different groups of people and get them to talk to each other. And we all just get to listen to that.
That's great. You just heard from Nicola Jones. Nicola is director of the SDG program at Springer Nature. Join us next week for our final episode of this series as we look at how Springer Nature products evolved to cover all of the goals and how open access has factored into the mix. This 4-part series is brought to you with support from Springer Nature.
If the kind of central idea underpinning the program is that you need high quality research evidence to solve global problems, you need to make sure that research evidence is accessible to people that need it in order to solve those problems. And open access plays a really important role there. It doesn't play the whole role, but it plays a really important role. And making sure that our SDG related content, or as much of our SDG related content, is not paywalled as possible, is something that the two things really go hand in hand for us: our commitment to open access and our commitment to the SDGs.
As always, underwriting opportunities for the Authority File podcast are directed by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer, with support from digital media assistant, Ashley Roy. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.